Welcome to Lunch with Legacy Leaders, a weekly talk show with local and national thought leaders on issues impacting the Black community. Now introducing our host, Miss Anne Marie Sorrell.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Lunch with Legacy Leaders. I am your host, Anne Marie Sorrell, President and CEO of the Mosaic Group. Before we get started with our broadcast, I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this broadcast possible. Thank you to Demesman and Dover Accident Attorneys and AARP, as well as the University of Miami Miller School of Business. Today's guest, Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Dr. Dale Caldwell. He is a professor and the executive director of the Rothman Institute of Innovation Entrepreneurship at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Welcome, Dr. Caldwell. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here. Excited to be on the show.
I'm happy to have you. So I'm going to introduce you formally to our audience, but of course, I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell us about your journey through so much. I mean, you have so many amazing accomplishments. You've worked on so many initiatives. We're going to touch on a few of them today, and you've authored several books. So of course, it was really hard to narrow down what we wanted you to address today because you just have so much to talk about with us.
Well, first, it's an honor to be here. And, I want to thank, my good friend, one of my best friends, Dexter Bridgman, the founder of MIA. So I've seen this organization grow and have been part of that and somewhat of an advisor. So it's been good. But I been involved with a lot of different things. I always start with my dad, New in March with Dr. King. He was a foot soldier in the civil rights movement. And that had spurred me on to try to make a difference in the world. And so I went to Princeton undergrad, got my MBA in finance from the Wharton School of Business, and then got a doctorate from Seton Hall, and have been developing entrepreneurial programs. And we'll talk some about how entrepreneurship, I believe, can change the world and really reduce poverty. So, I'll answer more about myself as we go through the questions.
Absolutely. So with that being said, thank you for sharing your journey. Let's talk about the Rothman Institute of Innovation Entrepreneurship. What is it that you all do there? What exactly is this institution?
Well, great question. So the Rothman Institute has been around about 20 years. I've been there just 3 years, and it's been one of the first entrepreneurial institutes within a university. As some know, every major university has several institutes with specialties. And so our specialty is entrepreneurship. And so our focus was on family businesses. We've become one of the national leaders in understanding family businesses. Our focus is on veteran businesses, where we have a program where we help veteran business leaders and their immediate family members develop a business plan and really help their business grow. We do student entrepreneurship where we help students, and we're really getting deeper into urban entrepreneurship to really get into our community to help Black and other types of businesses really grow and thrive and create jobs for the community.
Wow. Well, that sounds pretty robust. I know that, like you said, if you guys are, started back in 20 years ago, I know there are few, not a lot, but there are a few universities that have entrepreneurial centers or some element of that at their institution.
Yeah.
So what about?
Go ahead. Let me just say this. One of the things that's different about us is that we're very external focused. A lot of the other great entrepreneurial institutes are very much focused on students and internally, and they're doing incubators. We're really focusing on really pushing this agenda of entrepreneurship to really to be a major force in society.
Well, that leads me to your work in creating what you call entrepreneurship zones. I've heard of opportunity zones as it relates to like economic development, redevelopment, and things like that. But what exactly are our entrepreneurship zones, and how did you come up with that whole concept?
Well, I grew up in urban areas. I was born in Boston. I lived in Harlem for a while, in Roxbury, and my dad was a minister in the communities. So really understand what it's like to be in an urban community. And the previous presidential administration came up with this idea of opportunity zones. And, that person happened to be a real estate person, and opportunity zones are just tremendous opportunities for real estate investors because they get long-term tax credits for investing in these poor communities. So on the face, it seems like a great idea. And some opportunity zone programs and some developers are excellent about that. But Anne Marie, the reality is that those new real estate ventures are pushing out urban community. They're pushing out local businesses. They're pushing out. So you're going to see all these urban cities like Miami or Newark, or they're going to be beautiful. They're going to have all this stuff, but all the poor people are going to be pushed to the side. They're not developing. So the idea of Entrepreneur Zone, and I wrote several articles about this, is to really, instead of pushing them out, why don't we help to grow those businesses in the community and create new businesses so that they can create jobs and people can afford to live in the cities that are expanding. So I'm not against necessarily opportunity zones, but many of them, and we have to watch them to make sure they're not just pushing people out. Instead, they're really bringing people in and increasing wealth in the community. And that's what Entrepreneur Zones are about. And they're ecosystems. So often programs support one business here, one business there. What we're saying is really, why don't we support all of these businesses together with financing, with education, with support, job training, other things, so that they can be a cohesive unit to really grow much more effectively and much more rapidly.
And I totally agree with that. I was actually having a conversation with a colleague yesterday about a development that's coming into one of the lower income communities. And, everyone's super excited about it. And I said, yeah, development is great. And I'm glad that there are people who may be getting the opportunity to do some outreach to get them to get their, zoning changed and all of that. I said, but what have they really committed to the community that they're coming in? They've just bought up basically not just empty land, they bought actual homes of people who, unless you're giving them a very substantial amount of money to uproot them, and they can actually afford something in this real estate market, where do they go? So you're now buying up all the homes in this neighborhood, you're buying up all the businesses, and they're going to be displaced. And yes, development is great, but like you said, what happens to those persons who now have to figure out whether they're going to be able to afford to live with higher real estate prices, as well as limited inventory in real estate? And like you said too, and I was asking a gentleman, I said, what else are they doing? How are they creating equity? How are they creating wealth? And they had no answers for me. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think an entrepreneurship zone would be a great thing for governments, particularly, to have these developers incorporate in their developments and hold them to it.
Yep.
As some type of, and I don't know if there's some equity stake in what you develop with the Opportunity Zone, but there has to be some other solution other than come in, build something big, shiny, and new, and everybody else has to vacate that can't afford to live there anymore.
Exactly right. And you're right on target. And people don't think about that. People don't really understand how many people are struggling in life, and it's gotten worse since the pandemic. And so small businesses are the largest employers in the U.S., yet they've been shuttered largely because of some of the regulations and other things. And so one of the things we're doing at the Rothman Institute, really nationally, which is why I love being on this program in Florida, is to really push this idea of using entrepreneurship to empower the community. And as you know, in our community, there are entrepreneurs everywhere. You have to survive, you have to be an entrepreneur. But so often capital is short. There's not enough capital to do the business that they want to do. And instead, I'm saying government, their number one job is to create jobs, and we need to hold politicians accountable and say, well, what jobs have you created? Right. I don't care about your policy. I don't care. But if your policy doesn't create jobs, then I don't want to hear that. And so we as a group, especially people of color, need to really push this. So I love your question. And more people around the country are saying, well, yeah, what is this doing for our community? And what's happening after that? So I'm so excited that you ask about that.
Well, I think the question too, and I work in the development side, so the question too is, what permanent jobs are you creating? Because a lot of times some of these projects come in and they may create 200 construction jobs. Right. But then the other jobs are maybe like 50 or 100 that are permanent. So I think the narrative and a question that we as a community have to be able to ask as well is, what permanent jobs are you creating? But then how many businesses are you also creating or allowing to grow and expand in this development so that they too can create permanent jobs? And how many of those are in your economic plan?
Exactly. And how do you increase the net worth of the community? I mean, and public policy doesn't talk about that. But if you look at, I was doing a program. We started something called the Black Excellence Alliance, and we were interviewing this Warren Thompson, who was one of the largest Black restaurateurs, and he was talking about Boston. And the average net worth of white people in Boston is like $220,000. The average net worth of Black people in Boston is $8.
Whoa, did you say $8?
Yes, $8. This is real numbers. And so we look at income. So say you even had those 50 permanent jobs or 300 permanent jobs in the hotels that are being built. They're low-level jobs. They're not going to increase any net worth. And so the idea of entrepreneurs is really, how do we build the wealth in the community? And one of the things that I say to my friends, white, Black, yellow, green, rich, poor, is that in America, it doesn't make sense to have poverty, because you don't even have to care about poor people. When poor people have a job and are paying their bills, rich people get richer. So think about it. There's fundamentally no reason that we have this disparity in wealth that actually impacts hurting everybody. And so the only way to do this is really through entrepreneurship, because government, even if government wanted to do the right thing, there's not enough money in government to really support the growth of these communities. There's not enough, not enough taxes they can do, and there's not enough money in corporations. It really has to be about the empowering of entrepreneurship to move forward. And so obviously I'm very passionate about that. But I think if we as a country, as a community, can really get behind entrepreneurship to improve the community, we can move the ball.
Absolutely. So in your research and in in your research, how effective do you think, and I'm talking about, and I'm sure you've done some national, you're in New Jersey, so not just research in New Jersey, but nationally and globally, because even globally, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we see where even on the continent of Africa, when you have, programs for women to make products and then sell them, that's a way for them to survive and create, even if it's not wealth, but create an income for them and their families. So from your research, I just want to know from you, how effective can you tell us in our audience that reducing poverty, one of the main core pieces of your work for Entrepreneurship Zones is to reduce poverty. How effective has that been in your research, both nationally and globally?
Well, and that's a great question. If you can see behind me, there's a banner that's called the Black Excellence Alliance. And so I founded a number of things. First, I founded the Black Tennis Hall of Fame. And then recently I founded the Black Entrepreneurs and the Black Inventors Hall of Fame. And we did our inaugural induction ceremony on May 30th in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for the 100th anniversary of the race massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that most people didn't know about until this, which says something about our education system and our history. Well, why is that important to entrepreneurship? Well, during segregation, when segregation was legal, Black folk had no choice but to be entrepreneurs. And so the Greenwood section of Tulsa, Oklahoma became the wealthiest Black community in the country because of entrepreneurship. And so what does that mean? Well, remember, during segregation, 7 of those families had their own planes during segregation. And it was all because of entrepreneurship. It was all because the community supported entrepreneurship. We're really trying to look to create those entrepreneur zones where you have multiple entrepreneurs coming together, supporting each other, creating jobs, improving the education, reducing crime, improving the quality of life. So it really is, when I tell people this, it's like a no-brainer, but people in public policy don't fully understand that one, they don't believe that we are truly entrepreneurs, and they don't understand that it's not about, tax dollars or other things. It's really about empowering the community. So, and as you start to look at, whenever you have successful reduction in entrepreneurship, the research shows in poverty, there's an entrepreneur somewhere around there that's part of it.
Yeah. Wow. Let me ask you another question. So with entrepreneurship, because I think too, how are you all encouraging entrepreneurs to look at emerging trends, emerging markets, new technology? I personally am building with my team a cannabis ecosystem around entrepreneurship, where we're teaching entrepreneurs, especially Black and brown people that have been impacted the most, how to start variations of different businesses that can support the cannabis industry, which is growing very rapidly. So there's technology, there's manufacturing, there's so many others. There's this big infrastructure bill that just now came out. So how do you propose, or how do you, in your zones, encourage entrepreneurs to really kind of take off the narrow focus and look at expounding on their ideals and opportunities that are emerging?
Well, one of the things that we teach is what I call the E-mindset, or the entrepreneurial mindset. And so the reality is, every local or small business is not necessarily run by an entrepreneur. Every family business is not run by an entrepreneur. Every veteran business is not run by an entrepreneur. But you can develop that entrepreneurial mindset, and so it's like the growth mindset. And so the idea of the entrepreneurial mindset is to begin to look at new opportunities, is to realize that your success is based on doing things in new and innovative ways. I contrast that with the incremental mindset. No offense to my friends who work in government, but many folks working in government have the incremental mindset that I always do. The reason I'm doing this is because I've always done it that way, which drives me crazy hearing that. But that, and they will say, well, does that make sense? Well, we've always done it that way. Does that make sense? And so we have to get out of that mindset, and we can help people get into this entrepreneurial mindset to say, and to step back. One of the mistakes that entrepreneurs make is that they get into products that they love, but they don't know that the market loves, right? They assume everybody loves the product widgets just as much as they do, and they may not. So you really have to kind of, think about what is the need, and you have to solve a problem. And so what we do is really say, well, what problem are you solving? So the cannabis is an industry. Now the metaverse, as I'm talking about, everybody here, Facebook, this meta stuff, this is another opportunity. And the real entrepreneurs are ahead of the game. They're not waiting till it's like a stock. If they tell you that, Joe's stock is going to go up, by the time you hear that, it's too late. You've got to be ahead of the game. And so when you look at these things and you start listening to the news and you listen to other things, so you hear about cannabis coming to various places, you hear about the metaverse coming to places, you hear about all sorts of things, you hear about trends happening. So if you step back, and it's fun, you begin to think that. So what we do is we kind of push people out of their comfort zone. And one of the things I learned when I was at Deloitte, I was at Deloitte Consulting for 11 years, which really helped me develop this way to think, is that, it's important to be comfortable being uncomfortable. As an entrepreneur, you've got to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's not everybody. Not everybody can do that. They want to be comfortable. But you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your mind. You have to believe in your capabilities to be comfortable saying, hey, I'm stagnant here. I need to try something new.
Yeah. And can you elaborate on that uncomfortability? That's the word, I believe. Because sometimes people don't understand, sometimes we say these phrases, but people don't understand the levels of uncomfortableness that happens with either needing to shift or evolve or look for different opportunities, or just being an entrepreneur in general.
Well, entrepreneur, one of the things that I often like to say is that when you're an entrepreneur, you wake up unemployed every day, because you really have to work. You have to hustle. You have to make sure that your business is going, and you're not really unemployed, but you're really but you're comfortable because you believe in yourself. So when you're uncomfortable, it's doing things differently. It's thinking out of the box. It's doing something, challenging yourself to do something that you wouldn't normally do. And the reality is, the more we work with people in this, the more you do that, the more comfortable you become doing things that, well, I don't know what the outcome is, but I'm going to try to do it anyway. And so it's important for the audience listening to really think about that and think and be honest with themselves. Say, am I stuck in the same? Am I not willing to try new things? And what needs to happen to me to really try new things? One of the things I wrote a book called Intelligent Influence, which has become pretty popular, about the fact that we're all products of our influence. And so many of us, because we grew up in a household where their parents would say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to create this product. And the parents say, well, if it was going to work, somebody else would have done it already. And so they discourage that entrepreneurship. And so we may have grown up in that environment and we still hear that voice. We have to challenge that influence to really say, hey, look at, now when I was at Princeton, this guy named Jeff Bezos was there. Well, Jeff Bezos is he was just an engineer, not any more impressive than anybody on this call. And he really had a vision that wasn't, that people didn't believe in, to put credit cards on the internet to buy books. And back then, nobody was going to put their credit card on the internet. But he took that into one of the largest companies in the world. So you need to study those stories. So if you have doubt about entrepreneurship, begin to study the stories. And there are plenty of Black entrepreneurs who have taken nothing, from a Magic Johnson to others to really become successful. So begin to study that. But for us as a community, especially us as a Black community or the Latino community, we have to control our destiny. Yeah. And right now, we don't control our destiny. We rely on other people to control our destiny. And the way to control that is through entrepreneurship, and it's through capital.
Wow. That's so spot on. So with that, it segues into my next two questions, and it's two-part. So for anyone who wants to be a trailblazer like you, sir, and create an entrepreneurship zone in their community, or any entity that's looking to create entrepreneurship zones in their community, what type of advice could you share with them?
Well, first, my email is dcaldwell@fdu.edu, dcaldwell@fdu.edu. If you're looking to start an entrepreneur zone or have some questions, feel free to send me an email, and I'll get back to you. It may take 24 hours, but I'll get back to you. So that's one. So if you're really interested in learning more, and I can send you, I've written a number of articles in international publications and others about that. Two is really take inventory of the businesses and the community, because we want to build it around a community. So understand what community. So you may have grown up in a community that's struggling now, right? And there may not be many entrepreneurs, but what we would love to do is work with you to figure out who are the entrepreneurs that are there, because we don't want to displace anybody that's there. What opportunities? So you talk about cannabis, or we talk about the metaverse. Those types of businesses could be anchor businesses. So the entrepreneur zones are almost like the urban version of a business mall, the way the mall used to be, where you get people together, you get stores together, but we're doing it in the community. And the goal of it is to do, and one of the other things, so I have a foundation called the Dale Caldwell Foundation, and our focus is really on trauma-informed job training. That I coined a term. I was head of an urban school, and I found that many of the students had what looked like post-traumatic stress disorder. They were dealing with very similar symptoms that you get when you're in the war. But the reality is, Anne-Marie, it wasn't post. They're in a beautiful school, but then they go home to chaos and violence and sometimes abuse. And then they come back to the school. So that trauma is there. So I coined this term urban traumatic stress disorder. And no doctor has ever pushed back on it because it's continuous. But one of the things that we find is that trauma in urban communities hijacks the amygdala, the part of the brain, the fight or flight part of the brain. And has nothing to do with how smart you are. But that's where, and I do a lot of studies in education, that's where I got my doctorate, is that many of our students are struggling because they're dealing with this urban traumatic stress disorder. They can't focus in class. So one of the realities is mindfulness, the ability, kind of the secular prayer or meditation, where you just put your cell phone away, you sit back, you close your eyes, and you feel your breathing for 5, 10, 15 minutes. That helps to change the brain back and helps you focus. So I think really everybody should be doing this mindfulness. And I'm also pastor of a church, Covenant United Methodist Church in Plainfield, and I like to keep busy. And so prayer, we actually do mindfulness before prayer. And so the research shows prayer can actually change your brain and your focus. So you can begin, and not everybody's religious, so I'm not saying everybody can pray, but everybody can do mindfulness. So when you begin to do that and you start to use mindfulness in these communities that cause trauma, and you start to really help people who may have been unemployed or coming out of prison to get trauma-informed care so that they can work, we begin to address poverty in a very sustainable way.
Wow, that was It's like mic drop over here. So you've given some advice that entrepreneurs that are, or aspiring or growing entrepreneurs, mindfulness, looking at your environment, looking at different emerging markets. Do you have any other advice or tips that you'd like to share with aspiring or growing entrepreneurs?
Well, one of the things I'm trying to do, because the church is plays a big role in the Black and brown communities, and I'm really trying to push this idea of entrepreneurship and churches. Those are two segments of society that actually have been overlooked in many ways, and that if they can come together, because many of the members of churches, many of the most successful members of churches are entrepreneurs. And so to really come together and to support this ecosystem that helps everybody. And if we focus on, so often when we say reducing poverty, people think handouts. And so the other thing, and Anne-Marie, I like terminology is very important. I think social media has made words more important than ever. And so one of the things I like to say is that I was actually at an anti-poverty conference when I used to be a state official in community affairs, and everybody was saying the safety net. We need to get the safety net. We have the safety net. I said, we need to do more than the safety net. The safety net catches people and keeps them there. It's important to feed and house folks, but what we need is a safety trampoline. We have to bounce people back into society, and we're not done with our responsibility until we're bouncing people into society. We're helping them to be able to pay their bills, to be sustainable. And this entrepreneurship is one of the ways that we can build on the feeding programs by having these job training and safety trampoline entrepreneurial programs.
Absolutely. Wow. So now you've written quite a few books, 6 to be exact. One that really sparked my attention is your book, The Power of Influence. And, the word or terminology influencer has been expanded on, and, there are lots of influencers now, from social media influencers to political influencers to corporate influencers to the people, philanthropic world of influencers. So talk to me a little bit about the book, and what's your take on influence and power, and why did you write the book about it?
Well, that's a great question. So, Anne-Marie, I was going to write a book on leadership, and there are a million books on leadership, but I thought I had one of the best, but I'm kind of an etymologist. As you can see, I like to study words. I see what's the root cause of words, what do they mean, are they being misused, and so on. Just as an aside, the word copacetic, that we say copacetic, that came from the Black community. That's a word that came. So every time we use that, it's in the dictionary now, and we did that. But so I looked up Webster's definitions of leadership, command, and authority, and I found that the word influence was in at least one definition of each of those words. So about 10 years ago, I did this study, and I found that influence is a word that's hidden in plain sight. As they'll say, she's influential, she's an influencer, he's an influencer. What does it really mean? Does it mean you're rich, or you're powerful, you're good looking? And so we really haven't studied, but we really studied it in the way we do. But we do what we do, think the way we think, and accomplish what we accomplish because of influence. We don't realize we're a product of our influence. When we're born, we're an empty glass. And our influences are poured in, good influences and bad influences. And so the example that I use are accents. That no child is born with an accent. They can be born in Brooklyn or London or Sydney, Australia, or Johannesburg, South Africa, and they develop a very different English accent. Think about all our other influences, our favorite sports teams, our culture, our religion, who we think is attractive, how we view politics, all those influences, and we need to be in touch with our influences. And also the research shows that our musical taste, actually for women, who are always ahead of guys, are developed between 14 and 24, and men 15 and 25. And so it doesn't mean you don't like other stuff, but that's when your brain is developing. You first fall in love. And so everybody on this call has music that will take them back, right? They remember. They'll hear a song and remember, oh, that was my first boyfriend, my first girlfriend. And so when you start to think about this, everything is influence. And so if we want to change ourselves or we want to change others, we need to, and we have some negative influences. So sometimes people are abused or others and they have negative influence. You can get through it, but your positive influence has to be that much stronger than your negative influence. So that's where I believe virtually anybody can change that mindset. So when we talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, we have to put enough influence in there to make sure that their mindset goes from the incremental mindset to the entrepreneurial mindset. And that book has changed my view of the world, because when you understand and you fully internalize the fact that everything is influence, you start to realize why things happen. And you start to realize how media and other things are influencing us to do things and think certain ways. And we've got to take control of that influence for a community, for a Black community, a white community, yellow community, green community, to really empower itself. And unfortunately, we are suffering from a lot of those negative influences. And part of it is the influence of generations of slavery and other things are still, those influences are very present today in our community.
Wow.
And it's important to, one of the things that I admire, and Dexter and I talk about, I admire my friends from the islands and friends from Africa, because folks who grew up in the islands in Africa know they can be anything. They've seen a Black bank president. They've seen a Black president. They've seen all this stuff. Those of us that are multi-generational in America, we've seen a Black president. I've never met a Black bank president of a major bank. I haven't met, and so I went to Princeton Wharton. Maybe I could do that, maybe I couldn't. But that impacts our influence. Then the TV movies where the blonde person is always successful and the Black people are always physical and dancing and so we start seeing these influences. We have to break free and create our own influences, and that's part of the entrepreneurial mindset.
Wow, I love it. I love it. So, Dr. Caldwell, do you have anything coming up that people can hear more from you or follow you or tune in? You have a podcast or anything, an event?
Yeah, well, I'm the host of two TV shows. It's called RVN Television. So you just Google RVN Television. One is called Entrepreneur State of Mind, of course. So we talk about with people who are influencers like you, Anne Marie, and others. Dexter's been on it. Dexter Bridgman's been on it. Another show called Family Business World. I'm really advocating family businesses are the best employers in the world. And actually, they are most of the businesses in the world. Because they have to treat their employees very well, yet very few people don't know about it. And so I talk about us supporting family and local businesses. We have to go out of our way, even if we pay a little more, but it comes back to us because they're the ones that contribute to our community. So I do those two shows. So RVN Television. So I've been doing that for a year and a half. At the Rothman Institute, virtually every Friday, this Friday, we have a lawyer talking about some of the legal issues related to employment now for small businesses, because now with the pandemic and other things. So those are some of the things that I encourage people to. And this is the website, our familybusinessworld.com. We have a number of the old videos on there. We talk about our family business program. So we're in it together. And so everyone on this call, my hope is, if nothing else, you get this idea that entrepreneurship is the foundation of turning the community around, but also America around. The country is in real trouble now financially, and it's not about one side or the other. And then this is one of the things, Henry, and I'll be quiet after this, but that I really rebel against this conflict, because the powers that be like the conflict. Because what we need to do, and the nice thing about the Entrepreneur Zones is I've had both Biden supporters and Trump supporters like that idea, because they know that it's about that empowerment. We need to really focus on entrepreneurship and not really sit there with this back and forth, because that distracts us from the issue at hand. The issue at hand is turning the community around and really utilizing entrepreneurship to create jobs and wealth.
I agree with you 100%. Being an entrepreneur and an instructor for entrepreneurs, it's one of my greatest passions. So thank you for all that you do. Do you have one that you kind of just dropped like 1,000 golden nuggets? But I don't know if you have one last takeaway that you'd like to leave with our audience.
Well, the one thing that I say is the influence, obviously, that we're all influenced. And one way to understand your influence is to write your autobiography. And so what I ask people to do is not necessarily for publication, but let the spirit move you and just write down. You can write any story. You can start at age 13. You can start at age 1. You can start at age 25. But begin to write down, because what that does is and the more you do that, do it for about a half hour a day so that you get in the habit, you don't burn yourself out. But what that does is that gets you to reflect on who you are and where you should go and what influences you've had and what influences you need to overcome. And it'll bring you to tears. It'll bring you laughing. But that's the best movie you can watch, is your own life. And everybody has an interesting life. So begin to write that down. And I'll guarantee that if you do that for a month, it'll change your life.
Wow, I love that. And I'm glad you said that, because many times there are those of us out here who are like, oh, one day I'm going to write an autobiography when I become so famous or rich or whatever, successful, whatever success looks like. And we never really do that. So thank you for sharing that information. I love that idea. I'm going to start writing mine this weekend.
And Emery, just remember, so people often say, I'm ready to write, so I'm going to do 4 hours a day, and you burn yourself out.
Yeah.
The real trick, and the reason I've done 6 books, is that you do a half hour and you stop before you're ready. So you look forward to do it the next day. And so you start full, and then it becomes a habit because you start doing some interesting things. So you got to kind of influence yourself to make it a habit. And it's just 30 minutes a day. Don't do 4 hours, once a week, 30 minutes a day, and do it in the evening or the morning, whatever is comfortable for you. And I do guarantee that will change your life if you do it for 30 days.
Wow. Love that. Dr. Caldwell, I could talk with you for hours. You're such a wealth of knowledge and information. Of course, one of my favorite subject matters, entrepreneurship, leadership, influence. So, but I'm not going to hold you here for hours.
No, I could talk to you for hours. And so I want to have you on my show. So I want to have you on Entrepreneur State of Mind. So
I would love to. I'd be honored to be on your show, sir. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Stay with me for a little bit. I have a few announcements to make. Before we get into announcements, we want to talk about and hear from Mr. Eric Gordon Knowles, president of the Miami-Dade Chamber, discussing their upcoming annual holiday gala this Saturday.
It's an honor to be here with you and my magazine. I just want to give kudos to Dexter and the team that's doing some amazing work, highlighting those in our community that Stephen M. Ross is our honorary chairman, and it will be held at Hard Rock Stadium. Of the year, it's been a rough couple of years for all of us. We're starting to come out and to live again, but this will be the first gala that we've had. Is that we will be receiving that, and we have our award, in which Maya Passamore will receive that one. And then we have what we call the H.T. Smith Lifetime Achievement Award for all the great work that H.T. has done in our community. He spearheaded the boycott back in the 80s when Mandela was slighted by our our local government. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that right now. But anyway, H.T. has been a trailblazer himself, and we have the H.T. Smith Lifetime Achievement Award, and that's being given to none other than Bill Talbert, who just recently retired from the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau after being there 30 years. So I would say that's a lifetime. And so we look forward to honoring Bill and all the others. But a special presentation that we're going to do is recognize and celebrate Thelma Gibson. It is her 95th birthday. It's her 95th birthday. That's an amazing milestone, and she's still at it. She was co-founded the Thelma Gibson Health Initiative, and so we just thought it would be right to celebrate her. Her birthday is in December, and we will be there, so come out. But when I say come out, a lot of you've heard that tickets have been, they're sold out. Sponsorship is sold out. But we do have what we created, we call the lounge experience. So you can purchase tickets for $150, and you can be a part of the overall experience. When the event begins, we will have a reception. Everybody will be in a reception. And then when the event begins, those sponsors that have tables will go to their tables. The lounge experience, guests will stay in the lounge. We'll have monitors that you can watch the event on those monitors, and then we will serve dinner. Everyone will have an amazing dinner, and after the dinner, we will have a party. So we want you to come out. You can go to www.m-dcc.org, or you can call the chamber at 305-751-8648, and you can purchase those lounge tickets. I'm telling you, a lot of folks are buying those tickets, so jump on it. It's going to be a great night. Folks are still calling. They wanted to buy tickets to the gala. Tickets are sold out in the main ballroom, but we do have the lounge experience. And, I want to thank some of our sponsors, Baptist, Brightline, obviously the Miami Dolphins, MCO Construction, all of my board members, and I'm going to get in trouble because I'm forgetting, I don't have a list of all our sponsors, but please go to our website, www.m-dcc.org, events, and you'll see all of our sponsors. And I truly want to thank those sponsors for their support of this year's gala. And I look forward to seeing you on this Saturday. No, I was going to say November. Today's the last day of November. So, and as I'm laughing. But anyway, thank you, Dexter. Thank you to the team for all the support that you do. See you on Saturday, December 4th. Love you.
It sounds like such a fun event. I totally wish I could be there. I don't know. I might have to do a surprise pop-up or something for the lounge. But sounds like a fun event, right, Dr. Caldwell?
It sounds like a lot of fun, and he's such a great leader. I've gotten to know him over the years. So I wish I could, but I'm stuck in Jersey, so.
I know. Well, he's definitely amazing leader. Well, definitely want to thank our sponsors, the Mesman and Dover Accident Attorneys and AARP. Please be sure to check out our current issue of Legacy Magazine and featuring South Florida's healthcare professionals of 2021 at miamediagroup.com, and that's GRP. Also, the MIA Magazine and the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau presents Art of Black Miami 2021 issue, the November 2021 issue. It's a special guide to exhibits spanning the African diaspora. For Art Basel, visit miamediagroup.com. And also be sure to watch our lineup of shows. We have something for everyone. Mondays is the Business of Black Business at 1 p.m. with Jay Reynolds. Tuesday, My Money, Your Money at 7 p.m. with Bridget Lumpkins. Wednesday, Soul at 7 p.m. with Nikki Jellin. And of course, on Thursdays, yours truly, Lunch with Legacy Leaders. And at 7 p.m., Flavor of South Florida with Chef Irie. So remember, share this video, mark your calendar, and we'll see you next Thursday at noon. Thank you again, Dr. Caldwell.
Thank you very much.